Hello and welcome to Shiny Side Out, and thank you, Paydirt, and thank you, Omega Logos. Go, 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 Mackie, here we go. With Dave and Mackie, and Dave is not here today, it's just Mackie flying solo on WZZR, broadcasting from Australia, down under, the land exists, for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. Yes, it's back to freedomslips.com, so if you can't find Revolution Radio, go to freedomslips.com. All good. It will resolve. I'm in the chat there now, so you can go ahead and do that. And it's more than just radio. So jump in the chat room if you can. Like I said, I'm there. This is show number, I want to say 403, 30 and 400. It could be 2 as well. I could be mistaken. So I do apologize if I get the show number wrong. But it's so many shows, 400. Anyway, whatever 400 is, we're going to talk about the hypothesis some more. You're going to see what it's all about. I mean, so you talk about the stuff, so what? Who cares, right? I care. You should care. Now, it's on air, online, and on your smart device, so grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. If you missed Solaris' show, shame on you. I did. I was cooking. Yes, that's a thing. And I am sorry, but I will catch it in the archives. Yes, and you can too. For just $5 a month, you can access all the archives on Freedom Slips from all the hosts and all the shows. You should check her out. She's awesome. She's published. She's actually got documentaries. You like video, like moving pictures. That's right, with sound, not just books, not just audio, but the whole shebang. And you should really have a look, especially if you're interested in psychotronics. Artificial telepathy, mind control, things like that. It is really fascinating stuff. All the stuff that's coming out now, Solaris was way ahead of that, and she was certainly at the beginning of that curve. If you want to know more, go ahead and check her out. She's got a whole bunch of websites and things, but the show that is just on before Shiny Side Out is awesome. Always awesome guests. I do apologize for not having listened to it today. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For me, that's the Darug people. And for Dave, if you were here, it would be the Dark and Jung up on the Central Coast, where he is. And we would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and future, as it were. It's a thing. Aboriginals have been in Australia for a lot longer than anybody else. There were several waves of immigration that came through at the time, over thousands and thousands of years. We push a bit further, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80,000 years back. There's now a very strong movement, and I urge you to check it out, that disputes the out of Africa theory, and it is really more of an out of Australia theory. And you know what? We really don't know. We've got a lot of theories. We scratch in the dirt, we dig up some bones, and we think, eureka, I've got the answer. But in reality, no, really, we do not have the answers. We have some theories, and that's awesome, because you have to start somewhere, right? Hypothesis, theory, and then you get some more facts, and it becomes a solidified, a solid scientific fact. Like I said, though, before, this is really the point of the hypothesis that we've been discussing these last few shows, and will continue to discuss for another couple of shows. At some point, the scientific method breaks down. It's awesome to look at the physical world and measure things, and repeat experiments, understand how chemistry works, how physics works, nuclear physics, even astrophysics, quantum physics. Even though our understanding completely falls apart at that point, because it's completely non-intuitive, quantum physics. If you understand quantum physics, I congratulate you. If someone tells you, they're probably lying, because it doesn't really make sense. We can speculate on it, but it just is not really commonsensical. But the scientific method breaks down when we talk about things like, and as we're going to discuss this a little bit today, the paranormal phenomena, right? The phenomena that escape rigorous scientific testing, because it can't be tested, and the evidence for their existence is at best anecdotal, which means it's relayed, or it comes across to us via stories, eyewitness accounts, people having seen things, experienced things, even videos or audio recordings, right? But because it is such a such an uncertain field, and you don't really, what do you measure? Like, you have these Ghostbuster little ectoplasm spectrometers. Is that what you're measuring, or general field density, or electromagnetism? What should you measure when you deal with the paranormal? And this is really something that the people on the Skinwalker Ranch came across quite a bit. There were scientific teams there, and now it's uninhabited. The people left because they just couldn't take it anymore. But what one of the scientists said, and I recall this watching the documentary, it felt like the phenomena were studying us right back. So what do I mean by that? So there were quite a few, large black dogs. There were sightings of skinwalkers, but also, I guess, Sasquatch types. There was this one case of a full-grown steer, like massive, I don't know, maybe even a ton or so animal, that was found inside of a shed. Now, the shed just accommodated the steer's dimensions, and there's no way it could have gone in through the door. The shed would really have to have been built around the steer in order for it to go in there. Now, if you're a professional skeptic, and I say this advisedly, a naysayer, as it were, an armchair critic, you would say, well, in order to hoax it, they probably did build the shed around that poor steer. I like to go the other route and say, well, they probably didn't, because there are easier ways to get publicity than trying to build a shed around a steer, even if that steer should be sedated. But be that as it may, so there are all these things that are happening, and whenever the scientists tried to put their finger on something, it changed. And it wouldn't repeat. The phenomena wouldn't repeat themselves. In science, repeatability is really critical, right? If you can't repeat it, it doesn't exist. And now it might repeat itself in other guises, in different forms, but not in the same exact way as you first experienced it, potentially, right? I'm just spitballing here. So what we need is a new approach to study these phenomena, and it's really hard to get that, but it's a funny thing as well. When we discussed reincarnation as part of this show cycle, but also as his own show cycle, one of the comments that was made by a mainstream scientist that we told you about was, he said, I think it was a he, that, well, we can't really test any of this. Our scientific method doesn't really cover this whole reincarnation gambit, right? It doesn't do anything for us in the terms of, we can't take it to the lab and, what do we do? Do we take the boy that says he was, reincarnated and slice him up and look what's different to some other boys? Or what do we do, right? It's a tough thing to test for, because we're talking about something quite insubstantial. Let's call it the human soul, the mind, transferable. The transferable something that is inside you. Is that what it is? Is that what's happening? When we die, something transfers out of our body and goes somewhere, and then comes back, right? That seems to be happening. Now, the hypothesis has its own idea about that, and we formulated the hypothesis because all the explanations of our reality didn't add up for me, and then Dave as well, when we started talking about that. And I've been working on this particular thing for, well, decades now. But this show has given me the freedom, if you will, to spend time researching and putting together information and learning a lot more over the last 8 years. I learned a bucket load of things, and they all helped to shape the original hypothesis, where we are indeed somehow caught in this reality, but we'll talk about it more later, and reincarnation is the mechanism by which we're caught. I do not believe, and I could be wrong, of course I could be wrong, anybody could be wrong, I do not believe that we're here to learn, really. I mean, we could be, and that's not a bad thing. I guess we are, to some extent, we're here to learn, but the point is, the learning, I think, that we are meant to take away from here, and the only way to escape from what I've seen or gleaned from the evidence such as it is to live the life of a self-denying monk, or nun, as it were, and completely cut all ties with this reality, not have any chains tying you here, not have any emotional investment, make sure your karmic slate is clean, and not want anything, you know, even do away with your needs as much as you can. The Cathars thought so, the Buddhists, the Hindus think so. You have to escape this wheel of life and enter nirvana. And you know, nirvana translates incorrectly more or less to nothingness. I think nothingness only in the sense of this particular reality. So I want to say otherness rather than nothingness. I think we would be going home, whatever that means, if we were to escape this reality and weren't caught in this cyclical rebirth over and over and over again. And it's a broken prison, I think. You know, things like Deja Vu. Some people that have the ability to you know, see the future and see distances. You know, you've got these remote viewers as well. The other cracks in time space, you know, where people seem to have maybe traveled in time physically, even, or artifacts have. And it's clear that this reality is fractured and broken. It's not smooth and well finished, as it were. So as far as the prison is concerned, this cage is faulty. Now, the afterlife is part of the cage. So, you know, you might leave your body at the door, but the door doesn't lead to freedom. The door just leads you to another section of the prison where you, in due course, are issued another body, unless you can somehow escape that reassignment of another body as you go through this door. And then we're going to spend quite a bit of time on that as well towards the end of the show cycle. But look, there have been a few interesting things as well, and you might be interested to hear what happens here in Australia. I am in Sydney, and today is actually not a bad day. It's cooler, and there's not as much smog, as it were, so that's helpful. But it's certainly the bushfires are unabated. They are horrific at the moment, and I don't know if you've seen the extent of it, but the forest and the land that has been destroyed is massive, and it is not yet finished. It's not finished. It's going to get hotter again. There was a bit of reprieve, like I said, today for Sydney. Less smoke, less heat. Yesterday was 45. Funny thing is this: last week, Wednesday, in Australian time, it was the hottest day on record. 40.9 degrees Celsius. 40.9 Celsius. Right. The previous hottest day was 40.3 degrees Celsius in 2013. And when I say the hottest day, it's the aggregate average temperature across Australia, right? That's the aggregate. So if Australia was one place, the average temperature would have been 40.3 in 2013, and then on Wednesday it was 40.9 degrees. 0.6 of an increase, which is quite significant. Overall as an aggregate average, right? With temperatures peaking close to 50 degrees Celsius in certain areas of Australia. That was Wednesday. Come Thursday, I think it was Thursday, it's the hottest day we ever had. So Wednesday was the hottest day we ever had, beating 2013, and then the following day beats the record breaker yet again by a full degree, 41.9 degrees aggregate average across Australia. That's very, very, very hot across a landmass the size of Australia. So imagine the continental United States, about the same size, and the average temperature for all of your cities, on aggregate, is 41.9 degrees. I think it's about 107. I don't want to tell you something wrong. I'm going to look at the Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion, and I will tell you exactly. Oh, you can hear the clicking of my keyboard. Oh, where would we be without Google? 41.9. Okay, yeah, I was right. Oh, look at that. 41.9 degrees is 107.42 Fahrenheit. Pretty hot. Pretty hot. And like I said, in some areas of Australia, it was approaching 50, which is 122 degrees Fahrenheit. 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Also hot. Very, very hot. We're talking Dubai hot, we're talking Arab Peninsula hot, desert hot, not livable really hot. And we're running out of water. We're running out of water in Sydney, and in our wisdom, we decided not to build a desalination plant. Okay, that was stupid. I suggest we start post-haste on that construction. Yep, that's correct. Oh, Pay Dirt, hey, buddy, how are you? Yeah, look, Possibly. Most good ideas are simple. I agree. Well, look, I'm not discounting any of the things in. So Peter is thinking that maybe God should be followed, and it should be our director, the principal, and we're his agents. No, that's a good opinion too. Yeah, I have no issue with it. But by the same token, it is not something I share. Not at least the God that as he's represented in the Bible and in the Quran and in the Talmud and the Torah and so forth. That's not the God, I think. And this is one of the last truths you will learn as a Freemason. The great architect and the great adversary, right? So the master of this system, and that's what the Gnostics believed as well, is the enemy. The master of this system, whoever built this reality, is the enemy. The true God is outside of this reality, not in gross matter format, but rather in subtle matter or energy. And that's why some of the people that were called heretics by the burgeoning Catholic Church were burned or otherwise disposed of, because they believed that Jesus Christ did not die at the cross. They said it's impossible for him to die at the cross. Well, why would you say that, Mackie? Well, that's not what I'm saying. That's what they said. And what they said is, well, Jesus, being the Son of God, could not possibly have been made of the same gross matter as you and me. Not possible. Right. Okay, so what was he made of? He was made of subtle matter that doesn't die, right? Yeah, possibly, Peter. That doesn't die. So it was impossible for Jesus to die at the cross because he was made of subtle matter. Yes, he suffered. No one will argue that, but he didn't actually die. He then just went back home. Yeah, Atman. Yeah, well, oh, look at you. Huh? Well, look, it's really interesting to see how violently that was opposed, the Gnostic view, and in the end the Cathars were burned for it, the other Gnostics were burned for it, people were killed all over the shop, because if you got an idea, you must make sure that your idea wins, otherwise you can't win, and you don't get first prize, which of course is what everybody's after. Make no mistake, most of the religions we have today are there as a matter of political convenience. The Roman Empire was flagging, right? It's going, what do we do here? We need something galvanizing. Anything will do. And Christianity offered itself up. Look at this. This is great. People believe it. We throw these Christians to the lions, and they still believe. Hey, let's take this and make it the state religion. Get all the people behind you. Man, this is some serious belief that people have here, right? Of course. That's what happened, and the same happened with Islam and other religions as well. They were taken on as a matter of convenience. Ways of life, not so much. Buddhism is more a way of life than a religion. Hinduism is a religion, but aspects of Hinduism are a way of life rather than a religion as well. It would be too long and complicated to discuss all the theology here. Suffice it to say, everybody has the right to believe whatever they want, with the exception of people that try to push their beliefs down your throat. That's no good. That doesn't help anyone. Everybody should have a good opinion, but you see, an opinion is good, right? And a strong opinion is even better if you're willing to concede that you might be wrong and are willing to change your opinion if shown facts, evidence that not necessarily invalidate your opinion, but show there could be another thing, or maybe your opinion is not the entire truth. Right? I believe that would be really, really great if everybody could have an open mind and we discuss things openly. As it stands, I find it very amusing, to watch Richard Dawkins argue with the church leaders whenever he does. Or I've read his books too, and he's as dogmatic as the bishops and cardinals that he chooses to fence with. Science is not like that. Okay, we just don't know. Okay, it's called the theory of evolution, and Dave and I discussed this at length. I myself think that if we are in the evolutionary field, then I think punctuated equilibrium is the way to go. Catastrophic change leads to catastrophic changes within your DNA, and it seems as though your DNA is designed to react to your environment. So these are not blind mutations, right? They can't be. Why do you say that, Mackie? Well, if evolution was driven by blind cell mutation and or genetic mutation, completely blind, right? I mean, nothing. It's just cells mutate because of radiation, because of other environmental stresses, or who knows what, right? But they mutate. That's what happens. And that's good. But there's nothing is guiding that mutation. Mutation is a mutation by its very nature. It's random. Now, if it is random, and even given enough time, eventually some good mutations will come along. The problem is this: the mutation being random may not necessarily be good. In fact, if you look at it from a mathematical point of view, from a pure statistical point of view, chances of a bad mutation would far outweigh chances of a good mutation. So my question has been and remains: where are all the failed mutations, the gazillions of mutations that didn't work out? Where are they in the fossil record? And don't say, oh yeah, they're the ones that are extinct. No. They were functioning organisms. I want to see the organisms that didn't function. I want to see an elephant with an arm in its forehead. Okay, that's what I want to see. If we're talking about random mutations here, or maybe a giraffe with 6 legs. So this is what but we don't see any failed organisms like that per se, right? All we're seeing is viable organisms, more or less successful in surviving their environment, but they're all viable, right? I want to see the mutations that are complete bunkers, right? And you say, oh, well, they wouldn't have survived long. Okay, they might have been born and they died quickly. There still should be a mountain of failed mutations in the fossil record. Okay, that are completely nonsensical compared to the few that would have worked out well, unless our DNA reacts to specific outside pressures and arranges itself to deal with those outside pressures. Now, this, of course, then becomes very difficult to deal with, because that implies an intelligent agency at work. Whoa, now we're talking crazy stuff. And within the hypothesis, that's perfectly all right. Why? Because this whole construct is artificial anyway. We are living in an artificial construct. Plato, 2,000 years ago, cave allegory. Matrix, 2,000 years after. The Matrix is the world that has been pulled over your eyes. Yeah, could be. Could be. This is it. This is where we are. The black iron prison. I don't care what you call it, right? This is not home. This is not the real world. This is an approximation, a poor one at that, it seems, of our true capability and scope. But that is that's really for the end of the show cycle. But yeah, temperatures here are pretty bad. The bushfires are still bad. People are losing their homes. Our PM, what can I say? He is. I mean, look, Scott Morrison is just another person. He's a guy. He's our prime minister, but he's just another guy, right? He's not. He doesn't have any superpowers. And he decided to take a family holiday at the worst time possible, when Australia was on fire. Then 2 firefighters are killed while he's away in Hawaii. You can't blame the guy for wanting to take a family holiday, right? By the same token, it was probably the worst timing imaginable as far as his career in politics is concerned, especially because he criticized, I think it was the fire chief, can't remember, but it was a fairly senior person in the governmental apparatus for going out to dinner while there was a fire crisis. Not quite the same as going on holidays, is it? So yeah, look, the opinions are divided. It was really the worst time to go. And again, but the problem is not that he went on holidays. The problem is that the government diverted funds away from the firefighting efforts prior to the actual fire season starting. Like, there were budget cuts. There was also a lack of back burning because the government gave in to green pressures. In Australia, you have to understand, bushfires are part of the ecology. A lot of the plants have evolved to spread their seed through the agency of fire. So, the bush burns, the tree burns, and the seeds, the fire heats them up and they pop. think of popcorn in a similar fashion. The seeds pop and the seeds are flung, far away from the mother or father tree to sprout elsewhere. So it's part of the ecology. The problem, of course, is now that the fires seem to get worse. Our temperatures are higher. So if you've got the highest temperature in 2013 ever, aggregate, right? And then you break it in 2019, and yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, there's 6 years in between. I'm not concerned. But if you break it again the next day, then you should start getting concerned, especially if we and we're just at the start of summer. We are at the start of summer here in Australia, right? I just shudder to think what happens in January and February when we really get hot. So something is happening, right? Am I a proponent of man-made climate change? I don't know. The evidence, in my opinion, is still out. There is definitely a very strong indication that we are having an effect. Okay, we're definitely having an effect on the climate. We're having an effect on the planet. We're polluting the living bejesus out of it. But I don't think it's only the human agency that can be blamed for climate change. I think climate change obviously is a normal thing. We've gone through it, umpteen times in our geological history. It's just a thing that happens, and there are many, many factors to consider, obviously. But certainly the human factor should not be underestimated. And we should move away from fossil fuels anyway. Fossil fuels are a bad idea. They're more or less a finite resource. It costs a lot to dig up and ship around and refine and do all those wonderful things. So it would be a lot easier, especially now since we've got fairly efficient batteries and fairly efficient solar panels. It would be a lot easier to have solar power, wind power, even tidal power. And it makes a lot more sense here in Australia, certainly for solar power. There's a lot of sunshine here in Australia. California, same thing, I imagine. And obviously around along the equator, in any of the hot, arid places, solar power is a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. And fossil fuel is just, it should go the way of the dodo. We should be done with it. Thank you very much. It was good while it lasted. Now we've got to do something else. But the other things that happened, now I'm surprised. I wasn't surprised, but Donald Trump has been impeached by Congress. No, he has not been removed from office. It's a thing. This only happened 2 other times. Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton. I think Johnson was 1869 1869. I want to say 1869. I could be wrong, but there were 130 years between him and Clinton. And Clinton was 1998, so I think it's about 1869. Happy to be corrected in the chat room if I've got the dates wrong, but there was 130 years between the 2 impeachments. I remember that figure. And then, of course, now Donald Trump, 2019. 98. 1998? Yes, it was 1998, and it was 1868, I think. Anyway, who's quibbling about dates? Those 2 presidents were not Johnson. I think it was Johnson. Anyway, those 2 presidents were not convicted in the Senate. So they were impeached, but then the Senate said, "Nah, you're going to be okay," and they both held onto their offices. The same scenario is most likely going to play out here as well. Congress, under Democrat control, impeached Donald Trump. Had the articles of impeachment passed to the Senate. The Senate now must try the president and see whether or not he is then removed from office. Does he deserve to be removed from office? Well, you can like him or you can hate him. He's completely different to any other president we've ever had, or you ever had in the States. And I find American history fascinating. And I knew that whatever would happen, we would not get anything we had gotten before, because he's not a Washington insider. He's not a Washington. He's not a politico. Peter could be the same old playbook. Absolutely. But the key thing here is to understand that he is different, and he's different. I think, the dog and pony show. That's right. So the good thing here, guys, this is interactive listener radio, right? So there are people in the chat, and they're throwing me the comments and all that. And I answer it. So Peter here is making a whole bunch of great comments as well. Omega Logos is in there as well, making some good comments. And and there was something else here. There was Regular Girl. Hope I pronounced that right. And those are my main people here at the moment in the chat. So if you're in the chat, you can comment and maybe you want to ask a question or you want to raise a point. Yeah, same dog and pony show. But he's different, right? He's different in that he's. I mean, is he egocentric? Oh yeah, not by half. Is he maybe an embarrassment to the more conservative elements of the American government? I wouldn't doubt that for 1 second. Does he have an unexpressed thought? I don't think so. Everything he thinks seems to go straight onto Twitter. Smoke and mirrors. Yeah, look, and Epstein didn't kill himself. Just wanted to throw that in there. So it's really interesting to see it all play out. Certainly, a removal from office would be a huge embarrassment to America and would weaken it further in the international arena. Right. I mean, it's unstable enough as it is, right? The UK is still struggling to get out of the EU. Boris Johnson had a majority. He's got a majority now. He's got a mandate from the people to get out of the EU as quickly as possible, I guess. But the current situation in the world is anything but stable, right? It really isn't. There's a few things happening. The trade war with China is still happening. It's still going on. It's a very interesting time to be alive, and we just don't know how it's all going to play out. I just want to know, well, if okay, let's say Donald Trump is removed, which I don't think will happen. Who then? The vice president would step in. That's what protocol dictates. And then the election would then see a governmental change or not, as the case may be, and it'd be interesting to see how that would play out as well. But certainly, it's a volatile situation, and he's actually done a lot for the American economy. Trump, I mean, has, and you might disagree with most of his other policies and actions. That's all good, we're all free to disagree, but you cannot accuse him of playing with the closed deck. He's very open about all the stuff he wants to do, as sensible or insensible as it might be. He's open. Did he abuse his power when he spoke to the Ukrainian president and asked for a favor? Very interesting question. Two heads of state talking. Who heads of state talking? Right? Yeah. Omega Logos, I heard about that too. So Omega Logos just piped in and said that they also want to impeach Vice President Pence. Then it would go, okay, hang on. So you got the president, vice president, I think it's the Secretary of State who's third in line. Or it might be, it should be the Secretary of State for you guys in the States. And look, they'll go down the administration until they hit someone they like, I guess, right? It's hilarious. It's also a colossal waste of money for the taxpayers in America. I can't talk. I mean, we had a revolving door policy here with Australian PMs for the longest time. We didn't have, I think Dave said this last week, we didn't have a sitting prime minister that finished his or her term in the last 13 years. Not a single prime minister in Australia has finished their natural term. They were, because in Australia, you see, you vote for the party, you don't vote for the person, right? So the party, in this case, Labour or Liberal, these are the main ones here, can decide. Pelosi, okay, third in line. All right, thank you, Nancy. So it's the party. If the party says, I don't like this prime minister anymore, okay, out he goes. And that's decided in the party room. It's going to the people. The party decides, the elite of the party, of course, right? Behind sometimes behind closed doors. Okay, well, this prime minister is out and this one is in. Boom. Because again, in Australia, you vote for the party. A very interesting situation. I think it's in the immortal words of Kent Brockman. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Democracy just doesn't work. Well, it's I guess the best of the worst we have here. Oh, excuse me, I just took a sip to drink. But yeah, it's a very interesting, and you have to laugh, otherwise you're going to cry all day long. Okay, so what else happened in the world? Well, the protests. Yeah, that's normal. There aren't really that many amazing things that have happened this year. I mean, as like I said, the wildfires for us are, of course, the worst thing that is happening. There was a volcano that became active. Not that unusual, but I think 18 people were killed, maybe more now. They haven't found everybody. That's pretty shocking and unusual for us to in Australia. Like, we don't really see that many volcanic. Oh, New Zealand does a bit, I guess, but we don't see that much volcanic activity. But it seems to be heating up. Maybe the Ring of Fire is becoming more active. If that is true, then we are in for some tough times, obviously. But as it is right now, it's calmed down again, and the volcano has died down. What else has been going on in the world? Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's been quiet around Russia. It's been a bit more quiet around the Chinese as well. Interesting to see Suu Kyi, the Myanmar Prime Minister, in court defending the Myanmar army in the case of the genocide charge against the Rohingya. It's starting to smell a lot like genocide. 700,000 people displaced, horrendous atrocities reported. And she invoked the right to self-defense, saying that the Rohingya are fomenting revolution, Muslim or Islamism, overthrowing or starting terrorist acts in her country, and they were there illegally anyway in the first place. So Australia really can't throw any rocks here. We've got a horrific record when it comes to illegal immigration and where we put them. But it was interesting. She was an icon, probably the icon for a suppressed voice. Yeah, house arrest for years, and then she got the Nobel Peace Prize. She came to power, and now she has to defend the alleged genocidal actions of her army. Quite a turnabout, if you think about it. I don't know what to make of it, but it's symptomatic of the times we're living in. It is part and parcel of our confused times. The moral compass that we all once had, good, bad, and different. Was Christianity the best moral compass to have? Well, no, probably not. But this was something. At least in its true form. Same with the other religions, Judaism, anything really, right? So if people believed in God or gods, there was some supernatural agency that would let them live their lives hoping for a better after, right? That sort of eroded over the last few decades. There's a lot less. I mean, it still exists, don't get me wrong, right? I was in the Philippines recently, and I went to a cafe to buy coffee just across the road from work. And there was the Pope magazine in its second year of publication. And I go, oh, cool. And now Filipinos are very, very Catholic, right? And so it's not a surprise, but I just hadn't expected to see a magazine called My Pope. My Pope. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, so look, there are islands of faith here, there, and everywhere. And it's important to have an ethical and moral compass. I think it is important that we all have something that we believe in, and something that holds us to a higher standard, right? Even if it's ourselves. I mean, just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you can deny the moral and ethical responsibilities and obligations that you have, right? Fundamentally, ever since we started to live in cities, we've had social contracts, villages, cities. Now, when we became settled, domesticated, right? Before that, it was a bit different. But we had to have social contracts. And if you look at the Ten Commandments, they're sensible ways of living together in cities, right? That's really what that is. It's a sensible way to live together in a city. Because you shouldn't steal from each other. You shouldn't, covet your neighbor's wife and on and on and on, because that just causes mischief, and you can't just move away in the next spring because you're still stuck in the same city, town, village, whatever. And so you have to live with each other. And in order to live together, a social contract is necessary. And they're all pretty self-explanatory, right? You shouldn't kill. That makes sense. I don't want to get killed, right? Okay. Should treat others the way you want to be treated. Also reasonable. Shouldn't steal. Well, yeah, that's good. Now, there are, of course, always exceptions to the rule. I mean, in Germany, it is not a criminal offense if you steal food, if you're hungry. If you steal food to feed yourself, you will not be charged with anything in Germany. I don't know about other countries. Of course, in Great Britain, back in the day, 200 years ago, that's how most people ended up in Australia, by stealing an apple or a loaf of bread. Ooh, these criminals, you get them out of the country. They're starving. Let them starve somewhere else. No, not making fun. True story. That's how most people ended up here. Because if you're a really, really bad person, they just put you on the gallows, or chop your head off, or whatever it is. They wouldn't send you. It was mostly the petty criminals that ended up in Australia. French as well, had some penal colonies and so forth. So yeah, interesting times. But I do believe that we need a moral code, an ethical understanding of how we should live together. And I see a directed effort to destroy that, right? I see a directed effort to undermine our ability to form a cohesive way of living together. Who this is? I mean, who's doing this? I don't know. The elite, the unnamed men, and I think it's mostly men, in my opinion, in the shadows, possibly. Maybe it's just ourselves, because we are, moving away from each other. Now we're well connected. We say, yeah, we're all connected, hooray! But we're not really connecting anymore, face to face. We are connecting in every other possible way except face to face. I think I told you guys the story before. I went to an office years ago in Singapore. New, large office, a couple of hundred people on the floor. And I sat down at the random desk and started talking to the guy next to me. Well, okay, yeah, we all work together. And then it turned out that in the course of conversation that the guy to my right works very closely with the guy on my left. So there's a seat in between those two guys, and I just sat there, and they had never talked to each other. They've sent emails to each other, so they actually never met. They didn't know they were sitting next to each other. As unbelievable as this may sound, that wasn't an isolated incident. So I was the bridge, introduced them, and I'm not saying it was happy days from there on in, but it just shows you the level of isolation you have in a connected society, right? On a different tangent, I'd like you to think about this for a second. Who do you think the loneliest person in the world is? Who is the loneliest person in the world? Now, while you think about it, I'll take a sip of my drink. Okay, here we are. Okay, thought about that? Okay, I'll tell you. The loneliest person in the world is an introvert in a crowd. An introvert in a crowd is the loneliest person in the world. Now, solitude and loneliness are two very different animals as well, right? Some people prefer their own company. They're not lonely, right? They're just living in solitude. And I'll be honest with you, today I was out shopping, busy shopping center. I had to buy some things for dinner. And hundreds of people, thousands of people in the shopping center, massive shopping center, big. So I park, I go, noisy and shouting and screaming and people running at you. And I'm not good with crowds at the best of times. And then I get into the lift to go up to my car. Only one. And I took a lift because I had a trolley and there aren't any ramps. And anyway, I get into the lift and there's only me. It's a big lift, probably 20, 30 people, easy, right? And it closes. And there was quiet for 20 seconds. For 20 seconds. And then I get to my floor and the doors open, the noise hits me again. But those 20 seconds, I tell you what, they were refreshing. Just this little bit of quiet. Like in my room now, in my study. It's just me, my family's downstairs. Hopefully eating dinner. I'll have my dinner after. But again, all I hear is my own voice. And because I have to talk to you, I have to talk. But if I didn't have to talk, I might sit here in silence and maybe read a book or or some such. Because silence is actually valuable. It's really great to just be once in a while. Just sit there quietly. Just reflect. Let your thoughts run their course. Right? Follow your own stream of consciousness. Don't try to consume all the time. Right? I think that's a problem we all have. We all want to consume something every time, all the time. Listen, watch. Something. Play with your phone or whatever it might be. Just try not to. And it's really funny. People just walking with their face in their phone. There's this great little meme on Facebook that showed the face, sort of sucked into the phone. It was like a still photo, but it looked like the face was being sucked in. It looked great. It looked like a Doctor Who clip where your head becomes part of your phone. Anyway. Yeah, so let's take a break sometimes and just reflect and wonder and ponder. It's only a few minutes left here before the top of the hour, and we are going to talk about the hypothesis. And today we're going to kick off at the point of what it all means, right? What does it all mean? And this is really an important section of the hypothesis, where we talk about some of the non-physical elements. We talk about sleep a little bit. I want to talk to you about sleep. Last week, we talked about the gods, the ancient gods, the Anunnaki, how long-lived they were, and so forth, and what kind of time measure they might have used, right? If they were indeed, for all intents and purposes, technically immortal. Now, we could be as well. We discussed this at length as well. We spoke about telomeres and telomerase, the enzyme. We talked about monatomic elements, monomolecular gold, or orbitally rearranged monatomic elements. But certainly, there are mysteries upon mysteries which we just can't answer. My favorite mysteries surround the building of these monumental structures. The temple at Baalbek, Göbekli Tepe, the pyramids, the structures in South America, right? But there are structures everywhere, all over the world, and we look at them today and go, "What?" No. They're irrefutably there, right? Now, how did they get there? What happened? How was it done, right? And there's a lot of mystery just in the history of this reality, right? And then as we peel back the layers of the onion, we peel it back further and further, right? Because there are so many cracks here, it's not even funny. We realize that this reality may not be quite as real as we thought it was, right? So are these mysteries still important? Yes, they are. Yes, they are, because they speak to our forebears here. So I think we've been here for a very long time, and I think we've been reincarnated into these civilizations on this planet for a very long time. That's my opinion, only, right? For a very long time indeed. So forget what they say, how old we are, 300,000 years, 200,000 years, the human race, like Homo sapiens and all that. I think it goes back much, much further than that. And that's part of the suppressed history, because in order for this reality to work, we must suffer from collective amnesia. If we all remembered all the things that went before, we would be in a much better position to escape this prison. But we cannot be allowed that. We cannot be allowed to remember. We cannot be allowed to be unified. The funny thing is, I think initially the prison was probably quite different. And we were much closer to our true selves. You look at the stories of the confusion of languages, how we all worked well together. And like Dave and I have stated before, I believe that the original language was telepathy. Not a language, actually, but telepathy. And I don't mean thinking at each other, like, hey, Bob, bring me the book, or John, I need a burger. But, not talking about thinking. I don't think that's it at all. I think when you've got true telepathy, you think in abstracts and concepts that don't require words. You transmit experiences and feelings and emotions and pure ideas, as it were, right? So if I say chair, it's a word, Stuhl in German, right? And everybody has got a certain image, an abstract even image in their mind of what a chair is. But what if you could project just the concept chair to someone, right, rather than some kind of visual image or even a word? How much more powerful would that be? Or emotions or experiences, right? Now, what that would mean is it would be almost impossible to have war. It would be almost impossible to have any kind of conflict if your thoughts are laid bare. Male functioning human beings notwithstanding, of course. But I think it would be a much, much better society if we had working telepathy. And again, not thinking words at each other, but rather sharing your thought world. And maybe speech, which I think existed as well, was more for formal occasions, maybe, or for singing, or for performances and things like that, right? Potentially, I'm just spitballing here. And then the great language confusion came, and telepathy was taken away from us, and we were given languages. The greatest barrier between people is language. Language. Okay. That is the greatest divider, the greatest barrier. Even if you speak the same language, one of my colleagues, I never heard this phrase before, but he used this beautiful phrase. He said, "You're divided by a common language." And that's true. Sometimes people are violently in violent agreement. They're in violent agreement, but they're still talking at each other because they're not listening to what the other person is saying. Violent agreement, but they're still not listening, even if it's the same language. Now, how much more impossible is it if it's a different language? Impossible, unless there's goodwill on all sides. Telepathy, don't have that problem, because you're not thinking in a language. You're thinking, especially if you grew up that way, you're thinking in concepts, experiences, feelings, and things like that. I think that was the true original language, telepathy. And then something happened, clearly, to diminish us even further. That was taken away to make sure that we cannot escape from this reality. Why are we here? Well, that's all part of the show cycle. We will talk about that. Why are we here? That was my epiphany. Why would we be here? Why does it matter for us to be here? Now, the ultimate answer I don't have yet, but I certainly know the intermediate answer, and I will share it with you, possibly not today. And Peter, illusion versus reality, creation, spoken, made in imagination, thought into being. Yes, that is correct. And there's a lot of power in our words, in our intent. So prayer, let's call it prayer for want of a better word. Your intentions and your thoughts are powerful things. You can manifest reality. And I know I talk about it all the time, but there is the double slit experiment. Okay? And I'm not reducing it down to a conscious mind, has to this, that, and the other. No. All I'm saying is that something is being measured, right? But the act of measurement in itself is not sufficient. It has to be then looked upon by a conscious mind. And I'm not saying it's a disembodied conscious mind. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. All I'm saying is double slit experiment.
Listen to Revolution Radio.
Stubs our nose on reality. That's great. That doesn't make any sense, because it shouldn't make any difference if it's measured or not. And we're back. I hope. I hope I timed that right. Back with Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. Here we are. And this is Listener Funded Radio. Well, that means essentially that you funded everybody out there listening to this. Please donate if you can. Easy to do. Go to the website. There's a little choice. You can, there's a little button there you can hit to donate. It's right in the middle there. Or you can subscribe to the station's archives. That's good. It's like a monthly thing. $5 again. And you can look at everything that you want. Listen to everything that you want on the archives. And all the show hosts are there. All the information is there. It's pretty pretty cool. So it's show number, I want to say 403. I'm probably wrong. 402, maybe 402. 2 and 400, 3 and 400, one or the other. It's one or the other, that's for sure. And we are talking about the hypothesis. The hypothesis was my attempt to formulate a theory of everything. Like what explains everything? What makes sense, right? So not just in the physical phenomena, but the paranormal phenomena, all the things we seem to be experiencing, the things that can't be explained otherwise. And it's taken the better part of 40 years to really think it through and flesh it out. And it's certainly the last 8 years being on Revolutionary Radio have helped solidify that into something more concrete. We produced, well, more than 800 hours of audio. We have show docs, hundreds of show docs, thousands and thousands of pages of content that we presented to you, and we will go. We will continue to present to you. It's been a journey, and it's not over yet. It's a continuing journey. But the question we're going to ask ourselves today is going to be, what does it all mean? So we talked about the historical anomalies, the funny things that happen, UFOs, the Anunnaki, the reincarnation question, floods, myths, catastrophes, right? Talked about the elite. Dave shared with you at length the Atrahasis epic. For me, one of the most compelling documents in existence. If you read it properly, right? Read all of it and then go, wow, what? Mind blown. Okay. We talked about structures. We've talked about really strange things. The Smithsonian problem, with these footprints that shouldn't exist, mammals and large bird tracks that evolved long after the Permian period, yet tracks are clearly in the Permian. Never mind the human-like footprints they found as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff which is just odd going on, right? We talked about telomeres, and why we die. Why do we die? Well, we die, unless we have an accident and someone hits us on the head with a hammer, because our cells die. They copy themselves imperfectly as time goes on, and as these errors accumulate, we get to experience aging, which is not awesome, and eventually death, because our organs fail. But that's a state of being that is not natural, in my opinion. It is a state of being that was a kill switch, let's call it. Kill switch. Okay? Anyway, all of that, yeah, and Omega Logos, quite possibly. So Omega Logos hypothesizes that we all came from Mars originally. That's a definite possibility. It doesn't invalidate the hypothesis, because it doesn't matter which planet you're on in this reality. You have to be on one planet, and it would just go to show how long we have been caught here, if in fact we did originate from Mars, right? It is really, really, really interesting to contemplate our place in the cosmos, in this particular cosmos, and in a multiverse specifically. Now, our discussion of non-physical phenomena shows a mountain of evidence supporting the notion that we're not merely flesh robots or biological automatons, robots as it were, right? We discussed ghosts, right? That was actually really long time ago, show 36 and 37. Cast your mind back years and years into the ether. And the ghosts, or the stories and legends of ghosts, are present in all cultures, The Day of the Dead is celebrated around the same time, all over the world in completely unconnected cultures. Ancestor worship is a thing as well. Now, how does that fit into it, right? The poltergeist phenomena, right? There's scores of documented cases, right? Well, it seems, again, we talked about reincarnation and the work by Ian Stevenson, more than 3,000 case studies over 40 years. 3,000 case studies over 40 years, and other researchers as well. But let's just look at reincarnation and ghosts here for a second. So it seems there is something that defines you, whatever that is. And I don't care what you call it, Ka, soul, chi, it doesn't really matter. But for our discussion here, let's call it our soul, okay? Because that's something that people can come to terms with and get a handle on. So let's call it a soul. It's just the essence of you. Let's call it the essence of you, the soul. Okay. So you die and it goes somewhere, right? To be reassigned another body, to be reincarnated, potentially. Or if you lived like a Kapha Perfecti, maybe you can escape this dreadful black iron prison and go home. But if you don't, like most of us, then you would be reassigned a body. But what if something goes wrong in that process? And this goes again to the point that this universe, this cage, this prison, this panopticon is not perfect. It is stretching at the seams. It's cracking. It's showing serious damage in the cellar. Some water damage, boy. Look at that. Because it seems to not work very well. Because I think ghosts, as it were, and poltergeist. I think there are probably 2 or 3 classes of poltergeists, and I think sometimes the poltergeist phenomenon can be reduced or explained by the presence of a certain person with certain paranormal powers, but completely unaware, so subconscious, if you will, and that person, then manifests poltergeist phenomena. I also believe, though, that there are other poltergeist phenomena where it's actually an entity. And I think that these entities are somehow, they didn't make it into the room, let's call it a room, where your soul goes when you die. They somehow didn't make it. I don't know why, walk into the light, don't walk into the light, I don't know, whatever, right? But the point is that I don't think they made it. And they're still here in their non-physical form, which of course doesn't work out very well for them because they can't really interact with anybody else. But I think there's a potential of energy that's stored up within them that probably gets stronger with strong emotions like anger, frustration, and things like that. I'm just hypothesizing here. But it shows me that this black iron prison, this reality is imperfect, because people, spirits, souls fall between the cracks. Not only that, I think there may be a time when the realms, the 2 realms, maybe more than 2, connect. Right, the Chinese certainly believe that. The Christians believe that the Day of the Dead, right, the Lantern the festivals as well. There's a feast put out in Chinese culture for that particular day when the dead come to Earth to enjoy their foods and such. Movies like Spirited Away are really awesome that way. The way they visualize, or the world of the spirits. And I think there's a whole underlying other cosmos around on this plane, which is spirit in nature, if you will. Well, we can't see it because we are gross matter and they are subtle matter. But I think when you die, you actually transcend that as well, and you go to the other realm that's assigned to your bodies. But the spirit world still exists here. And if you're an animist, then you know what I'm talking about. An animist believes that everything has a spirit, everything has a life force, right? Which I actually subscribe to myself as well. And these spirits somehow get stuck in that realm, in that they can't progress further, in my opinion, into the next level of body reassignment. Because you've also got things like ESP, and this is really interesting. ESP, extrasensory perception, as it were, seems to be a real thing. Remote viewing seems to be a real thing. There was the work of Hal Puthoff for the CIA, and similar Russian projects around remote viewing, and it worked. It's not that it didn't work; it actually worked. And you ask yourself, well, so clearly there's more to this world than just the physical. There is another realm. There is another piece to the puzzle of which we are completely ignorant, for the most part. Not all of us. I mean, some of us are sensitives. They understand this. They can see into the spectrum. Is very like they can see further than just you and I, and sense things. Sometimes you can sense things, you can feel things, or you see something out of the corner of your eye, right? Or it's hard to put your finger on it, but it's there, right? And if you sharpened your mind, I believe that all of us could communicate with that realm. Now, not all the inhabitants, like the regular physical world, not all the inhabitants of that particular world are benefactors, right? I'm sure there's some nasty folks in there as well, but I think it's just as real as our world, right? Just more subtle, maybe slightly out of phase, if you want to look at it from a Star Trek perspective. But interestingly enough, there's also deja vu. And I mentioned this earlier. It's all connected, by the way. All these phenomena we can't really study because the scientific method completely breaks down when you want to study this. Deja vu, to me, indicates non-linearity as well as time fractures. What do I mean by that? Well, we all believe that time is linear. You know, it starts, there's a middle bit, and then it ends. Life, at least. Or, that time flows in one direction. And for us, because we are biologically crippled, it seems to flow forward. That's how we see the world, because our eyes point forward, not to the side, not to the back, not up or down, but forward. And this whole biological design, as I said before, I think has been inflicted upon us to limit our possibilities, right? I think in our true form, this body that we're inhabiting is a joke. It's like trying to bottle lightning, and that's what we're here. We're bottled lightning. Looking out of two eyes into the world in one direction, and that physiological, biological makeup, that again has been inflicted upon us, informs all our thoughts. Of course it does. It's fundamental to our existence. Imagine for a second if our visual processing was 360. In fact, forget that. Let's say it was spherical. Wow! Linear time would be a joke. We wouldn't think of linear time at all. I don't think. I think we might think of cyclical time or loop time or other things, right? But linear time wouldn't occur to us, right? Because it's just not a natural thing, I think. For us, though, in this particular form, it is completely natural, right? Completely natural. But okay, so deja vu, non-linearity of the time stream. Again, physics doesn't care which way time flows at all, and it seems that cause and effect are also out the window after some quantum experiments that were conducted. Okay, and cause and effect is probably the best expression of linearity. Time, if I hit my glass, it'll fall to the ground, it'll shatter in that order. My glass is not going to shatter, and then I'm going to hit it. But in reality, that's very well what could happen, because it doesn't matter. We're living in a non-linear envelope. In fact, I contend that time is a complete illusion. Another limitation that was placed upon us, where we can only experience the moment, we can remember the past, but we don't know jack about the future. Another reinforcement of the linear time, our memory, the way our mind has been press-ganged into working in this particular body, right? Which brings me to dreams. Now, we all know, well, by now we should know, that you will die without sufficient REM sleep. Why? Why? What is the evolutionary advantage of sleep? Not all creatures sleep. Some creatures sleep for a long time and then not at all for a while. Sleep seems to be an arbitrary thing, and for us needing 8-10 hours a night, why? People say, oh, it's in order for your brain to catch up with all the day's processing. So what you're saying is our brain is a computer that needs some processing downtime to work through its active memory. That's what you're saying here, right? Make sure that nothing gets stuck in RAM. RAM, not REM, right? And then, just add it, just put it into storage and do backup of all the things that you want to. That's also where memories are formed, right? Long-term memories when you sleep. Interesting that it would work that way, but again, sleep. I don't see the advantage of sleep. Why have sleep, right? Oh, because your brain, needs a lot of calories and you got to rest and all that. Sure. Again, evolutionary speaking, not really very convincing. What is interesting, though, when it comes to reincarnation, I want to quickly go back to that, is this. And I want you to listen to this very carefully. Objections to claims of reincarnation include the facts that the vast majority of people do not remember previous lives, and there is no mechanism known to modern science that will enable a personality to survive death and travel to another body. Researchers such as Stevenson have acknowledged these limitations. Okay, so right, that's the objection, because it doesn't happen to, not everybody can remember it, and modern science can't explain it. That's good enough for me. We should just not believe in any of that at all anymore. Oh, come on, seriously. Brings me to my pet peeve, placebo. We know the human body can heal itself. That's a fact. I don't care who you are, I don't care where you live, it happens. People go into spontaneous remission. Can't explain it. Science, doctors can't explain it. But there it is. What's it called? Oh, yeah, the self-healing effect, that's placebo. Well, that's not really true. Placebo is really referring to a very specific kind of self-healing. So let's say there's a medication people want to study. All right, this medication is a new headache cure. Beautiful. Here we go. We take a whole bunch of people and give them the headache cure, and then we take a whole bunch of other people and we don't give them the headache cure. That's called the control group. All right, just to see the effectiveness from a statistical point of view of the medication. So all the people that take the headache cure, we all get better. No more pain. Hurrah! Excellent. That's great. The medication works. However, there's a significant percentage. Well, there's a percentage of people in the control group that also gets better with the placebo. The pill, they thought that would help them, but couldn't, because it was a sugar pill, unless that particular headache can be cured with sugar. And what's it called? It's called placebo. Yeah. And that's it. Thank you very much. That's a placebo effect. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Shut up. This is the one thing that we should spend most of our time on, the placebo effect. How on earth did the people that didn't get the medication get better? Because clearly, they didn't need the medication to get better. Their mind told them, hey, this pill is given to you by a scientist in a white coat. He also had a clipboard. He looked serious. You must get better. And the body goes, ooh, you mean a clipboarded, white-coated scientist gave this to us? Brilliant! And hey, presto, you get better. Your mind convinced your body that it should get better because it received medication. Okay? That's phenomenal. That blows my mind. Why don't we pour billions into figuring out how that works? Let's just fool everybody into placebo, right? Maybe hypnosis is the thing to go here with. Oh, you got cancer, let's hypnotize you. You're all better. I don't know if that would work or not, but my point is the mind does something and the body gets better. It's a thing. Okay, it's an effect. They had to call it something, so the scientists, could just put it in a little box over there and, forget about it. Placebo effect. Oh yeah, that's what that is. So that's what we should spend our time on. But again, my point here again is that the reality we're inhabiting is a lot more complex, and I think in some ways also a lot simpler than we think it is. And the mind, our mind, is a critical. No, it is the critical component of this existence. The critical component. Okay. We also looked at a study. It was called the JACC study, Association of Sleep Duration with Mortality from Cardiovascular Disease and Other Causes for Japanese Men and Women. Both short and long sleep duration were associated with increased mortality from cardiovascular disease, non-cardiovascular disease, non-cancer, and all causes for both sexes, yielding a U-shaped relationship with a total mortality with a nadir at 7 hours of sleep. Now, what that means is, at 7 to 8 hours of sleep, actually at 7 hours exactly, you're at the maximum number of sleep hours to live the longest. So the hazard ratio was at its lowest at 7 hours of sleep, and at its highest, or at 10 hours of sleep. So too much sleep is no good, and not enough sleep is also no good, like a U-shaped kind of thing. So 7 to 8 hours is ideal. Why would that be? Why would that be? Well, too much sleep I can see, you know, that would probably be a bad thing, and you know, your body's just too slow, and you know, metabolism starts down. Too little sleep, okay, also, yeah. But why? The reason I believe is this: if you don't have REM sleep, right, your mind can't escape this reality at all. And this is, I liken this to solitary confinement. We're all in solitary confinement. What are you talking about, Mackie? There's billions of us. Yeah, no, we're all walking around in our own little prison suits. So the body you inhabit, that's your prison. Forget this. Forget everything else. Everything else is just a show for you, you know, some kind of virtual simulation. It doesn't really matter. Because the reality is this: you never ever touch reality. You never ever touch the outside world. Never, ever, not once. You have never touched it. You've never seen it. You've never heard it. You've never smelled it. You've been given approximations that your senses give you, and that your brain turns into something that you can process. But you have never experienced the reality of this universe in direct contact. It's always filtered through our senses. But Maggie, that's me. I'm my senses. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're like a little spider sitting in the middle, you know, and in the center of a little spider web, and that spider web is connected to all your sensory organs, you know, in your body. And then the signals come through, and you're the little spider that sits in the middle of it. But you don't get any direct input. Zero. We have zero direct input into our brain from the outside world. Everything is coming through a filter. And your body, of course, is the biggest filter, right? And your body is your prison. So imagine yourself being in solitary confinement for 60, 70, 80 years. Not so good, would it be? No. So what happens? In my opinion, when we sleep and have rapid eye movement sleep, that's what that is, REM, deep sleep, or not so deep sleep, actually REM. But if we have this sleep, we break free of this reality. Our mind escapes this body, out of body experiences and all that, right? Like the what's it called? The astral travel, you know, and all that, astral projections. Wonderful thing. I can't do it. I don't know anyone does, but I'd be fascinated to hear more about it. I'd love to learn it. Because I think that way you can access the real world, right? So you're let out of prison for, you know, well, however long you sleep, and ideally it looks like 7 hours. And for that time, you're out to, your mind is allowed to go into the actual real world while your brain does the mechanical processing of all the previous day's memories and all that wonderful stuff. But you are out there. And I say this because when you dream, everything makes perfect sense, right? You don't question the dream. Not really, right? You just go. You're just going with it. Oh yeah, okay. I'm a flower, and then I'm a banana. And, well, actually, I don't remember really most of my dreams, but in my dream, I'm perfectly content with the dream content. I don't question it, because I believe that when I dream, my consciousness is where it should be, sufficiently expanded to accept reality for what it is. I don't question it, because I understand it intrinsically, right? I come back to my body and I remember my dream, and nothing makes sense if I remember it. What the, how did that happen? I couldn't, what a crazy dream. Because within the context of this reality we're in, the dream, of course, makes no sense, because it opens up to a much larger reality, to a much larger cosmos, the multiverse, right? Which we're free to roam in our sleep state. Okay, that's what I think happens. Right. Sufficiently perturbed. We're now entering the tinfoil hat zone, like we haven't been there all along. Since we are, please turn off your individual reality modulators. Keep your hands inside the vehicle at all times, and please, no flash photography as it startles the phenomena we're about to investigate. Very good. They're still here. They're still controlling our societies. These are not dynasties, though they seem to exist as well. These are the same individuals that have been around for a long time. And we are as relevant as ants to them individually, though as a race, we are their livestock. And right now, it seems, we are approaching a critical point. Right? I hope I'm wrong about this. I really do. I hope I so hope we're wrong. Dave and I call this the Awareness Cascade. The Awareness Cascade. You can call it the Rapture if you're religiously inclined, or the Great Awakening, or the Ascension, or whatever you want to call it. I don't care. We believe that once we reach a certain critical number, most, if not all of us, will ascend escape this prison. I think it might be some kind of biological mechanism or psychic mechanism. I don't know, but that's a theory I have, because I have a hard time explaining all the extinction level events and the destruction of the societies that came before ours. Why were they, well, destroyed to the point of stone aging them, right? Let's bomb them back into the Stone Age. That's what pretty much happened to every civilization that came before us. And we see the remnants of their greatness. We see it all around us. We see it all the time, right? There it is. But we can't explain why they disappeared. And I believe this has happened in numerous times. Okay? And a number beyond counting. I think we are the true race with amnesia. We have no memory at all of what went before, right? And I think the knowledge exists in certain choice locations held by the elite, not for general consumption. You can't trust those pesky plebs with that kind of information, because what are we? Well, useless eaters for most of them, right? Useless eaters. So you can't be trusted. And I also believe that the people that are still here are just as caught in this prison as we are, I think for the most part. Not all of them necessarily, but I think most of them. And they've become completely institutionalized. Okay? Completely institutionalized. Yeah, we as a race, right, are reaching critical mass. And it really seems to be purely a numbers game. Hence the repeated cycles of extinction and our collective inability to remember any of our past high points. These mass killings seem to be necessary to keep us here, confined to limited and dulled existence, far below our true potential. Now, we did some numbers, and I used the Fibonacci sequence, like you do, and the calculation that I came to, which is frightening. That's why I want to be wrong. No, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong about this. But the Awareness Cascade could potentially happen in 2020, when the number of our population would reach 7.778 billion and something. Okay? 7.778 billion. That's where I think the critical number is. I've got more numbers there, but let's just remember 7.778 billion. And that by the projection is that we would reach that number in 2020. That's the projection. So that's next year. But why is it that way? Like I said, we are prisoners inside our own skulls. Our prisons are mobile, and most of us have no inkling that we are in fact in prison. Okay. And like I said, dreaming can be likened to a prisoner's day release or walk in the yard. Okay. Our bodies are the prison. They provide the physical limitations of this experiential reality. Look at our bodies. Look at how limited we are. And look how they direct us to think a certain way. Our biology determines our outlook on life. Okay? Just the fact that our eyes are pointing forward, just that, has got massive implications for the way we think. Believe it or not, and you don't have to, this is the final secret of the Freemasons. Something they may have learned from the Cathars or Templars or even older mystery schools. Once you make it to the 34th degree, you will learn that the great adversary is the one or the group that built this prison. Okay. How do I know this? Oh, it's a long story. The great work of the ages is our attempt to escape or turn this prison into a fit place to live. Okay. The same kind of secret tradition also exists in the East, Asia, and was handed down from master to pupil until the present day, when permission was given to more widely disseminate this dangerous knowledge. Go a step further. What if this universe, the prison, were an illusion? What if time and space were illusions? There's no time and space. Quantum entanglement. Entanglement seems to indicate that distance is an illusion, as time is motion through a given space. Space. Time is motion through a given space. That too must be an illusion, as there is no space. Could that be true? And a lot of evidence seems to be pointing to this. The holographic universe we'll discuss in a little while. We will get to that in a moment. Now, what if this were, all an illusion, time and space? It is clear that we don't understand this universe yet. That's beyond doubt. We have no idea, right? We've got some ideas, but we really don't understand fundamentally what is going on. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've done, and I don't care what you think you know. Fundamentally, we don't understand this universe. And the problem here is the complete non-integration of quantum and, let's call it, classical physics. Just doesn't, they don't go together. They don't go together. Okay? No matter what the nature of the prison is, though, the elite that is controlling us is aware of this, and they're prisoners just like we are, except that they have broken the cycle of reincarnation and past life amnesia. They know what is going on and are choosing to remain here. Maybe they have become institutionalized. Maybe they're afraid to relinquish their positions of power and privilege. Think of the guy in the Matrix who chose to go back to the Matrix in exchange for fame and wealth, right? Or think about, I don't know if you watched the movie Shawshank Redemption. There was a prisoner who had been there for like 50 years, and then he was released, the older guy. He was in charge of the library. And he came out, and he didn't know what to do with his life. I mean, he was an old guy who was working in a supermarket, and eventually he killed himself because he couldn't function outside of the prison environment anymore, right? That's maybe where they are, the elite. Maybe worse, because they have broken the cycle of reincarnation and past life amnesia. Maybe they just don't die, right? Maybe they just, or if they do die, maybe they found a way to retain all their memories and stay in power in that way. Okay? Now, what do we do then? Everything that appears to be good in this life is in fact not. Ideally, we should curb all of our desires as they tie us to this place. Food, wealth, physical pleasures, beauty, in short, anything that makes you feel good to be here physically is designed to tie you to this place. Most faiths, monks, ascetic practitioners, holy people, Buddhas, and so forth do practice austerity and deprivation to achieve enlightenment. I find it interesting that, again, I like to quote from the Bible because obviously I'm of Judeo-Christian background. Jesus said, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, all mistranslations and confusions aside, I think what he meant was a person that has that many ties to this world, a rich person, a person steeped into the physical, cannot possibly go home. The kingdom of heaven, let's call it. Home, like escaping this particular black iron prison. Can't. You cannot. Okay? Having children just means creating more prisons for our souls. None of the material things we cherish mean anything. Think of the chains that Scrooge's partner Morley wears around his body as he visits him on the first night. He forged them during his lifetime, right? Do you remember that? He's wearing chains, like he visits Ebenezer Scrooge, and then he goes, Ebenezer goes, why are you wearing these chains? What happened with these chains? Well, what happened to you, Morley? And he goes, oh, look, Marlowe? Maybe Marlowe, Morley, I think it's Morley. I forged these during my life, my grades, my possessions. These are the chains that are holding me here, right? All of the sages and wise men have said the same thing. All of them. Interestingly, that was pretty much the tenet of the Cathars. Even more interestingly, the church, not yet Catholic at that time, just the church, initiated a crusade against those people of the Languedoc era of France, killing most of the perceived heretics. The phrase, kill them all, let God sort them out, was coined in that very crusade. So then, who knew? Who knew? Now, this is an aside, but it's important as the Cathars seem to have been privy to the information presented here, which ultimately led to their demise. Okay? Cathars clearly regarded themselves as good Christians, since that is exactly what they called themselves. On the surface, their basic beliefs seem unremarkable. Most people would have difficulty in distinguishing the principal Kapha beliefs from what are now regarded as conventional Orthodox Christian beliefs. However, pursuing their fundamental beliefs to the logical conclusion revealed surprising implications. For example, that Roman Catholics were mistakenly following a satanic god rather than the beneficent god worshipped by the Cathars. Uh-oh. Like the earliest Christians, the Cathars recognized no priesthood. They did, however, distinguish between ordinary believers, the credentes, and the smaller inner circle of leaders initiated in secret knowledge, known at the time as boni homines, bon homs, or simply good men or good people. And it really meant good people because there are women there as well. Now, generally, they are referred to as the elect, or as the parfaits, or the perfecti. Cathars had a church hierarchy and a number of rites and ceremonies. They believed in reincarnation and in heaven, but not in hell, as it is now normally believed by mainstream Christians. The Kapha view was that their theology was older than that of the Roman Church, and that the Roman Church had corrupted its own scripture, invented new doctrine, and abandoned the beliefs and practices of the early Church. The Catholic view, of course, was exactly the opposite. They imagined Catharism to be a badly distorted version of Catholicism. But in addition to accusing the Cathars of faulty theology, they imagined a range of abominable practices which would have been amusing, except that converted into propaganda, they led to the death of countless thousands through the Cathar Crusades and the Inquisition. The Roman Church seemed to have successfully extirpated Cathars and the Cathar beliefs by the early 14th century. But the truth is a little more complicated. For one thing, modern historians have shown that many Catholic claims were false, while they have vindicated many Cathar claims. And there's a case that the Cathar legacy is more influential today than it has been at any time over the last 700 years. Well, I'm talking about it right now too. Hopefully more than just a handful of people out there in listener land, right? So you get to hear it. The Cathars are regarded as dualistic, believing in two equal and comparable transcendental principles: God, the force of good, and Satan, or the demiurge, that of evil, very similar to Ahriman and Ahura Mazda, by the way. They held that the physical world was evil and created by this demiurge, Rex Mundi, the king of this world, who encompassed all that was corporeal, chaotic, and powerful. Their understanding of God was entirely disincarnate, a being or principle of pure spirit and completely unsullied by the taint of matter. He was the God of love, order, and peace. As the physical world and the human body was the creation of the evil principle, sexual abstinence, even in marriage, was encouraged. Civil authority had no claim on a Cathar, since this was the rule of the physical world. The goal of a Cathar was to become perfect. Now we're going to go talk about the Cathars in more detail, and you do need to know. You need to know. Okay, this is going to be, some of it will be repeated, but it's really important that we look at some of this in more detail. Like I said earlier, the Kapha cosmology identified two twin opposing deities: a good god, right, and an evil god, right. The latter was often called Rex Mundi, or King of the World, and was identified as the god of Judaism. It was also either conflated with Satan or considered Satan's father, creator, or seducer. They solved the problem of evil by stating that the good god's power to do good was limited by the evil god's work, and vice versa. All visible matter, including the human body, was created by this Rex Mundi, by the King of the World, the evil one. Matter was therefore tainted with sin. Under this view, humans were actually angels, seduced by Satan before a war in heaven against the army of Michael, after which they would have been forced to spend an eternity trapped in the evil god's material realm, right here. The Cathars taught that to regain angelic status, one had to renounce the material self completely. Until one was prepared to do so, they would be stuck in a cycle of reincarnation, condemned to live on the corrupt earth. Whoa, that blows my mind. Zoe Oldenburg, a scholar, compared the Cathars to Western Buddhists because she considered that their view of the doctrine of resurrection taught by Christ was similar to the Buddhist doctrine of rebirth. Cathars venerated Jesus Christ and followed what they considered to be his true teachings, labeling themselves as good Christians. Cathars denied the physical incarnation of Jesus. Authors believe that their conceptions of Jesus resembled Docetism, considering him the human form of an angel whose physical body was only appearance. This illusory form would have possibly been given by the Virgin Mary, another angel in human form. Most did not accept the normative Trinitarian understanding of Jesus, instead resembling non-Trinitarian modalistic monarchianism, which is Sabianism, in the West, and adoptionism in the East, which might or might not be combined with the mentioned Docetism. Bernard of Clairvault's biographer and other sources accuse some Cathars of Arianism, and some scholars see Cathar Christology as having traces of earlier Arian roots. In any case, Cathars firmly rejected the resurrection of Jesus, seeing it as representing reincarnation, and the Christian symbol of the cross considered it to be not more than a material instrument of torture and evil. Okay, so they didn't like the cross. They also saw John the Baptist, identified also with Elijah, as an evil being sent to hinder Jesus' teachings through the false sacrament of baptism. However, those beliefs were far from unanimous. Some Cathar communities believed in a mitigated dualism similar to their Bogomil predecessors, stating that the evil god Satan had previously been the true God's servant before rebelling against him. Others, likely a majority given the influence reflected on the Book of the Two Principles, believed in an absolute dualism, where the two gods were twin entities of the same power and importance. In the same line, some communities might have believed in the existence of a spirit realm created by the good God, the land of the living, whose history and geography would have served as the basis for the evil god's corrupt creation. Under this view, the history of Jesus would have happened roughly as told, only in the spirit realm. The physical Jesus from the material world would have been evil, a false messiah, and a lustful lover of the material Maria Magdalene. However, the true Jesus would have influenced the physical world in a way similar to the harrowing of hell, only by inhabiting the body of Paul. Cathars also possibly believed in a day of judgment that would come when the number of just equated that of angels who fell, in which the believers would ascend to the spirit realm while the sinners would be thrown to everlasting fire along with Satan. 13th century chronicler Pierre de Vaux de Canova recorded those views. The alleged sacred text of the Cathars, besides the New Testament, included the previously Bogomil text, the Gospel of the Secret Supper, also called John's Interrogation, and the Cathar original work, the Book of the Two Principles. They regarded the Old Testament as written by Satan, except for a few books which they accepted. Wow, that's very interesting. Very interesting. Ooh, look at this Pater, Kerala. Yes, that's right. We're going to talk about the Kerala as well, and Indian Christians, ancient Christian community. Syrian Christians of Kerala. Yes, that's... Look, it is really interesting to entertain these things. Now, of course, they were all killed, right? They were all killed, pretty much. But the Knights Templar learned a lot from them, and I believe the Knights Templar are today represented by the Freemasons. That's what I think. My opinion, only happy to discuss it. Now, interestingly, the Knights Templar did not take part in the Albigensian crusade against the Cathars, and some believe that they were bonded by a common set of beliefs. Some think that the Knights Templar survived as modern-day Masons. I think they escaped to the New World, America, with some of their knowledge. I think the treasure they found was knowledge. A great and powerful knowledge, which the Catholic Church was terrified of, still is terrified of. Now, back to the hypothesis. It is an ingenious prison we are caught in. No matter what you accomplish, it is all taken away in your next life. You must start again. always start from scratch. Not only that, this reality is full of pain and suffering, and the more we love here, the more we suffer through loss and war and violence. The more you care about this reality, the more you suffer in it. That very violence of this existence, I believe, is damaging our essence, our soul, our chi, I don't care what you're calling it. It is what is reflected in our karmic debts. We need to break the cycle of violence, revenge, feuds, counterattacks, and hate. Well, maybe the whole point of keeping us here is to damage our souls. And all who come close to knowing this truth are killed. Cathars, the saints, early Christians, Jesus, etc., etc., etc. So, what then is the answer? Love. That's it. Everybody. Love everybody. Our cruelty and greed and ignorance have made this prison hell. However, some sages and Buddhas return to help us to turn this prison into a paradise. In the end, it's our choice. Escape from this prison must not be the only answer. It seems we can turn this place into a paradise as well. I'm using paradise here in the sense of home. This place can become our home. We do not know why we are in this state of existence, or who put us here, or why. Many explanations are possible. Maybe our collective capability poses a threat, or maybe we're here by accident. The Epiphany explained it a little further on, sheds some light as to the why. So I had an epiphany, and I'll share it with you, not today, but next time. And I've shared it with you in the past, right? Which brings us to the next component, and I will leave that for next week. And we're going to ask the question, how real is our reality anyway? Right? From a scientific point of view. Holographic states, SimCities, quantum weirdness, and objective reality, if there really is such a thing. We're going to talk about the holographic principle. We are going to talk about a whole bunch of questions which could lead us to believe that our reality is digital. What? Digital? That's crazy, right? Quantum physics. There's an article, November 14, 2019. We're going to get to this next week. Quantum physics. Our study suggests objective reality doesn't exist. What? Scientific paper. Yes? Yes, it is. We're going to talk about physics, quantum spookiness, and we're going to talk about causality. I don't know if we're going to get that next week or the week after, but apparently causality disappears at the flick of a switch. All right, and then it's going to get interesting. We can focus on the escape. Wow, what? There's an escape, Mackie? Absolutely. It's not easy. But if you work at it, you can escape this reality. I'll give you a hint. I mean, if you're a fan of the show, you already know. It's the pineal gland that we're going to talk a lot about. Again, that's probably not going to be next week. That's going to be in a few weeks' time. And I'm happy to say that we are on page... Exactly what page we're on. Here we go. Yeah. We are on page... Oh, not that far ahead after all. If we're on page 33 of 69. So it'll take a little while for us to get through the rest. I do appreciate you all having listened to me tonight. I hope Dave can join me next week. I hope he's okay. Like I said, his area of the world is directly affected by the bushfires, so I hope you're okay, buddy. You know, not that you come back from the Christmas party and find there's nothing left to come back to. I hope everything is going to be okay. I also hope that all the people affected by bushfires in Australia right now are going to get through it okay. People have lost their homes, but, you know, you can rebuild. Okay, no matter what view you take of this reality, as long as you've got your life, there's always a chance. There's always a tomorrow. There's always a next step that you can take. And it's important to realize this. Of course, physical loss is hard to deal with, but it is not the end of this particular world. You know, as long as there's life, there's hope. And hope really is the one thing that makes all of this bearable. There's an interesting story of Pandora and her box. The last thing, after all the disease and horrors and wars and all kinds of monsters had come out of her box, the last thing that was left in the box was hope to mitigate, I guess, circumstances. So no matter how bad things get, there's always the hope that things can improve, right? And that's all we have, is this hope at the end of the day to deal with reality, right? My grandmother used to say, it's okay to fall down. Okay, and she should know. She was running away from the Russians, as it were. Funny enough, they were in Poland with an infant, 2 small children, 1 older girl on a bicycle with a washing basket full of possessions. She was making her escape west at the time. They were in Dresden that night of the firebombing, and true to human nature, that washing basket full of possessions was stolen by, I guess, fellow Dresdeners at the time that were being bombed out. But yeah, it's okay to fall down, but you have to get up. It's okay to fall down. Everybody falls down. But within, you must find the strength to get up and keep going. If you can cultivate your existence into such a way that you can escape this prison, awesome. More power to you. Most of us can't. And I think that's the music. I think. I could be wrong. Not quite yet. But it's coming up any moment. Please donate if you can. Please support the station. It is now freedomslips.com again. Freedomslips.com, yeah, not revolution.radio. Freedomslips.com. So if you can't find your old link, that's where it is. And you can find us on YouTube as well. My preference would be if you went to the archives, subscribe, support the station, support some of the products that you can click through on the station's website. Those are all sponsors, and none of them are large corporations, I can guarantee you that. I hope you are safe wherever you are. I hope that everybody here in Australia is weathering it as well as they can. The fire season has just started, so I'm worried. And with that, I think I'm signing out. And I hope that you're all going to be joining me next week for another installment of the Shiny Side Out, SSO, with Dave and Mackie, our very own brand of insanity. Hopefully enlightening insanity, hopefully interesting in its own right. I hope you enjoying the shows. We've produced 400 odd for you over the last 8 years. Book is in the works, and trust you me, that's not as easy as it sounds, from a time perspective, at least for me, to put that together. But the book will be dealing with the hypothesis. That'll be the subject matter, and really all our shows are in support of the hypothesis, to take us on the journey, to make you understand how we got here. Be safe. Love you all.